This is the Milo Beasley Show. This is the Milo Beasley Show. There's only one thing you need to know. This is the Milo Beasley Show. And now, here's your host, Milo Beasley.
And welcome to the Milo Beasley Show. Dude, I'm super stoked for our guest this week. I first learned about our guest as a cast member on Grace Under Fire, but he's done so much more. A new book coming out. So let's go ahead and get right into it. At this time, please help me welcome Dave Thomas. How are you, sir?
I am good, Milo. Nice to be on your show. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I'm super stoked. You've had a great career, and it doesn't seem like it's ending anytime soon.
Well, it's not, because I'm still plugging things. This is the book I wrote with Max Allan Collins.
Yeah, and that thing is thick too.
Yeah, it's like 300 and something pages. I mean, look, and it's not small print either. It's not like my first book, which was an idiot book, a coffee table book about SCTV. This is a real book.
Yeah, it is called the Many Lives of Jimmy Layton.
That's right.
And so what struck me is first, and you co-wrote it with Max Allan Collins, who has done a ton of graphic novels, including Road to Perdition, has done Dick Tracy comics, worked on Batman. So like what grabs me is that the cover actually looks like a comic book or a graphic novel, but it's not. It's a full-fledged, is it a mystery?
Yeah, it's a quantum mystery. So I know, in the world of quantum physics, you can tell a mystery story. And I can get into that because I've got it all. But I mean, it might be a little much. Let me give you the short.
Yeah, absolutely.
The short version. A second story man, a little thief from South Boston, is on the run from a Vietnamese drug lord. And he goes across the river to Cambridge. He gets a Harvard sweatshirt and tries to blend in with the students. He's a young guy. This is something he does. But he needs money. And he's a B&E guy. So he breaks into a house. Turns out it's the house of a physics professor who's doing a quantum experiment in his basement. And poor Jimmy Layton connects the cables to the quantum computer and the gizmo that this guy, and I'll explain why I'm calling it a gizmo in a minute. The battery cables connects them, and they become a steering wheel in a car in Chicago over 1,000 miles away in a different version of his life. And he starts hopping from version to version of his life. And as it turns out, at the time that he connected those cables, somebody shot him in the basement of the physicist's house. So 2 cops from Cambridge are investigating the shooting of Jimmy Layton while he lies in a coma at Mass General Hospital in Boston. And in his mind, or in the other realities, and I leave it up to the viewer to make, or the reader to decide. See, I'm so used to writing film and TV, I call everybody a viewer. But they can decide whether or not his little exploration was real or not. Now, if I can just take a moment to explain the physics of this.
Right.
This is based on the work of a physicist from Princeton who's passed away now, but he was alive in the 50s when he came up with this, called the many worlds interpretation.
Okay.
And it's a multiverse theory. Essentially, it's this, that for every binary choice in life, you pull up at an intersection, you go left or right. The road not taken, you turned left, that becomes your reality. The right turn, the road not taken, exists and is a reality, and will branch off into all the choices that you might have made from that decision to make the right turn, and will be a universe, actually a multitude of universes, and they do exist. So when I heard that idea, I went, whoa, that is such a great idea.
Right.
What if somebody was able to bounce around from one version of his life to another? And the device for bouncing around is that he's shot in the head and he's in a coma. Because what Hugh Everett III said to his detractors, who were many, there were physicists who said, oh, piss off. That's so wrong. It's ridiculous. When you make the left turn and that becomes your reality, the right turn, the road not taken, and all the choices from that collapse. And he said, no, they don't.
Right.
And he said, but unfortunately, the only way to prove it is to commit quantum suicide. In other words, at that binary choice, at that left-right turn, you shoot yourself in the head and you will go right and you will explore that other reality. Now, unfortunately, that becomes difficult to prove using the scientific method because you can't come back from the death and report
Right.
your results. So he still had his detractors. And most people thought, yeah, you can't have two separate realities from the same thing. There's another thought experiment called Schrodinger's cat. It's a cat in
Right.
a box. You know this, right?
You're right. I think a lot of people are familiar with that. Is that it's both alive and dead.
Correct. And so until you observe it, and then the act of observing affects the choice, and it's sort of like
Right.
light being both particles and waves. And they're trying to. The hard thing about quantum physics is it's impossible to explain because the mindset to understand it is we're not wired for that. We're in Newton's world of dropping objects and they fall. Oh, that's predictable. How fast it fall? Force times mass. Force equals mass times acceleration. There's just like there's things that we're wired to understand. We're not wired to understand this stuff. But here's the fun part. They got the instruments for observing things at the quantum level so finely tuned that they started doing experiments with particles at the subatomic level. And they start firing electrons through slits, trying to figure out, are they going to go left or are they going to go right? Well, guess what? They went left and right. The same particle went two places and they were entangled. They call that quantum entanglement. This is mind-blowing. There's a very famous physicist called Richard Feynman, and he understood. He's one of the fathers of quantum physics. He said anybody who says they understand quantum physics is either an idiot or a liar. and that's how I feel right now in trying to explain this. I'm both an idiot and a liar. But here's the application of it to a novel. It's like there's no such thing as time travel. Everybody knows that. But there's theories of time travel. And boy, you write a sci-fi novel and get that wrong. The sci-fi nerds will pound on you. They become a really angry Twitter mob and they'll cancel you out of the world.
Right.
So I thought it was important to get the physics of this right and to try and understand it before writing the book. And so I started working on this. I tried to sell this as a TV show. And of course, I pitched it to a couple executives and their eyes glazed over. I could tell this was not going to go anywhere. So I thought, screw that. I'll write it as a book. So I had about 3 chapters written. And then this is the Dave Thomas story. I've got 3 chapters of so many ideas that it's mind-boggling that are unfinished. And I never would have finished it if I hadn't run into Max. And Max said, let me read those 3 chapters. And when he read them, he said, I like this. And I could get you a book publisher. I could get you an agent, or I could write it with you, which is what I'd rather do. And
Absolutely.
for me, this guy's written over 100 novels, not just graphic novels, but actually sit down, read them, fat, thick, many-worded novels. And I thought, well, okay, I'm 70, but I'm not too old to learn. Let's go. Let's go to school. I'll go to writing novel school with Max Allan Collins. And I had the best time.
That's fantastic. So I guess there's 2 questions on that, but one, what got you interested in the quantum physics, and how long have you been involved in that? And two, I guess you could answer this one after, is how long have you known Max?
I haven't known him long at all. I only met him a year ago.
Oh,
And we met face to face at Second City, but I don't remember that. It was a reunion show,
right.
the 50th anniversary. And he lives in Iowa, and he drove up from Iowa to come and see the show because he's a fan. And I met him there, but I met a lot of people that night, and I don't remember them. But then a mutual friend, Tom Kenny, who is the voice of SpongeBob.
Oh my gosh, I love Tom. He's
all right.
A great guy.
Tom introduced it. He said, "Dave, this guy's a fan. You got to talk to him." So I talked to him on the phone, and he said, "Send me the 3 chapters that you've written." I did. And then he said, "All right, let's write it together." And we did the whole thing in the COVID world by Zoom. We were not ever in the same room at once. This was a Zoom novel, and it was great. It was wonderful. It was a fantastic experience.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, to the point where when I finished it, I was kind of like lost. I mean, I'd get up in the morning and go, "What the hell am I going to do today? This is terrible. I got no book to write," So I started another one. And Max has got me going now. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
That's great. That's great. Now, again, I think luckily for you, the Marvel universe is about to introduce everyone to quantum realms and quantum physics.
Oh yeah.
So,
never squeeze that franchise until there isn't a molecule of liquid left that they can get out,
Exactly. So, you never know. I know you said you pitch it as a TV show, but never say never.
Go back. Oh yeah. That happens all the time. That you'll get a production company or an actor that'll read and go, "I want to do that," and they'll option it,
Right.
So yeah, that's possible. But I was a comic book fan when I was a kid.
Oh yeah?
I had all the Superman comics. It became a valuable collection because I bought one to read and one to keep. So the one I read that I'd get sort of breakfast cereal and milk on and things like that.
Right, of course.
Was not the one I kept. The one I kept was mint, glossy, beautiful, white pages. And I had a big box. And I had every Superman, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, Action Adventure, World's Finest. I think that's all of them. And from about 1957 to about 1965, something like that.
Right.
And then, because I was such a fanatic, a lot of my parents their friends would say, "We got some old Superman comics in the attic. Dave should take a look." So then I started getting Superman number 48 in mint condition, Superman number 11. Holy shit. And so I started filling in the numbers between 1 and 100 in the Superman world. Now, I don't have a 1 because they're worth like what, $2-3 million now?
Yeah.
But I had I don't know. I think the oldest one I had was a 4. I think I had a 4, and I had a 7, and then I had a 9, 11, and then I had way more in the 20s and 30s, and then a bunch in the 40s and 50s, right up to 100,
Right.
And they were all, if I didn't get good ones, I would take them to comic stores, because in the 90s, in the late 80s and 90s, there were a lot of comic stores, and these were starting to come back, So, and then I ended up in the Marvel world because my father-in-law owns a bunch of self-storage buildings. Well, I think you know where this is going. And when people don't pay their self-storage stuff, it gets auctioned off.
Right.
And sometimes it doesn't get auctioned off. And sometimes people don't. And so there were like about 20 long boxes of Marvel comics that he said, "Do you want these?" And I said, "Yeah, give them to me." So I ended up with a pretty massive comic collection, you know.
That's awesome. That's the dream right there.
Yeah. So I mean, I tease them for squeezing the Marvel franchise and squeezing every drop out of it, but
Right.
I do love the heroes. You know, I have favorites,
Right.
and then there are other ones I look at and go, "Well, who's that guy? Why are we watching?" You know, when I saw the Justice League movie, I'm a big fan of Superman, and I thought Henry Cavill is probably one of the best Supermans that I've seen. You know,
Right.
Christopher Reeve was pretty damn good. There have been a couple of others along the way that I thought were okay, but Cavill was he just nailed it. He looked like the guy, and he had the heft, and he had the, you know, he had the looks, he had the face, he had and he was pleasant. You know, he didn't have the sort of comedy chops that Christopher. Now I've gone blank on his name. The first Superman in 1978, not the first. Not George Reeves, Christopher Reeve.
Yeah, Christopher Reeves.
So George Reeves was the old TV one. Isn't that weird that they had the same name?
Yeah.
And then
I was just talking about George Reeves I was just talking about him the other day.
Oh yeah, in what context?
That he was on I Love Lucy as Superman and stuff like that. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
and his Superman suit is actually being auctioned off at an auction I think it's in November.
Well, that's going to fetch a pretty penny.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a couple of them, but one of George's outfits is being auctioned off. So,
wow.
There's a couple things that I was watching at auction, but that wasn't one of them because that's too rich for my blood.
What else is in the auction?
There's some Back to the Future stuff. I'm a huge Back to the Future fan, so there's a couple pieces in that. But there's also a ton of music memorabilia as well. A lot of old 50s, 60s, 70s original posters, concert posters. A lot of like Beatles, a lot of British Invasion stuff, Hendrix, stuff like that. That's on the music side of they're doing like a pop culture side and then a music side. So I checked out a bunch of those things to see what their estimated, auctions are going to be like. Oh, well, I might be able to afford that one, but
Well, I collect. I've got a model of the Titanic over there in a case with it's hitting an iceberg, and I've got the Terminator head that I was friends with Stan Winston. I got one of the Terminator heads.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. And got a few things, that are just kind of collector's items that I just love. I love collecting stuff,
I'm right there with you. My wall, I mean, you can see behind me.
See,
yeah. But like, still, I have a bunch of stuff on my wall. Like, I have a Back to the Future wall, and I have stuff over here. A lot of baseball stuff over here.
So that movie is sort of regarded by screenwriters as the perfect script.
Right.
It was, and I remember seeing it in the movie theater when it first came out, and I was just like, holy shit. Because I was a aspiring screenwriter at that time. And I looked at that. And that feeling you get when you see something that's so good that you're just depressed because you're never going to be able to write that, Right. I came out of that movie thinking, God damn it. Well, I might as well just quit now, and It was just such a great movie. Just all the moves and the turns, and the audience was just cheering and yeah. I mean, they were on their feet at the end. You know, it was dramatic, and it was a great film.
Absolutely. Again, huge fan. I have production use stuff from the first movie
Oh,
on
do
my
you?
wall over here. Yeah.
I worked with the guy that was the unit production manager on that movie. His name was Jack Grossberg. And they brought
Oh
him in. You know about him?
no, I've heard the name. I'm not familiar with him, but I've heard the name because you do a lot of. I watch a lot of documentaries, so of course they're always name dropping people. You know, oh well, blah 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 did this on this day.
They didn't put him in the documentary, which of course he's deceased, but I
Right.
mean that's one reason. But they also didn't put him in because there were other glory hunters that edged their way to the camera, and there was no room for poor Jack. But Jack was brought in by Universal after they'd been shooting for I think a month, and they fired Eric Stoltz and replaced him with Michael Fox,
Right.
and they said to Jack, "You got to be able to produce this for the budget. You can't go the original budget. You can't go even though you're a month behind. You're just going to have to find a way to eat those losses and make it work." And
Right.
Jack was always up for that kind of a challenge, and he said, "I'll do it, but it comes off the lot." And they were like, "No," because this is where the studios make their money. When you shoot a movie on the lot, it costs a third to half as much more because of all the rentals that they just sock
Oh
you with,
yeah, that makes
and
sense.
offices and sets and sound stages. And it's just much more expensive to be on the lot. And the reason they do that is so that they can avoid paying anyone profits because it's it's there and there's a kind of a it becomes a moving target in the budget world, because these some of these categories, these budget categories, never close. Oh, there's still some invoices coming in, 10 years later. Give me a break, close the damn thing out. But anyway, yeah, great movie. Great movie.
I want to backtrack a little bit to go back to obviously what I would consider a high point in your career, and that is SCTV. I mean, I was a little bit before my time, but going back and watching those as I was growing up, it was I would laugh so hard. I mean, especially with the skits with you and Rick with the Great White North. I mean, it, how did
How did what?
how did that really come about as far and I mean
SCTV
with
or
yeah with Saturday Night Live being a thing,
I'll tell you.
how were you able to be successful in shooting that show? I mean, there was obviously great talent, John Candy, Eugene Levy, but being successful, I mean, got to be tough.
Okay, so first of all, it wasn't successful at the time. We were late night, and in late night TV, you always get, the sort of bottom of the barrel in ratings. And Saturday Night Live, here's what happened. Lorne Michaels took people from Second City, which was a stage show. They had one in Chicago and they had another one in Toronto. Over the years, they've had them in Detroit and Cleveland, Las Vegas, everywhere, New York.
Right.
But at that time in the 70s, there was only two, one in Chicago and one in Toronto. The one in Toronto had great cast. I mean, it was like Dan Aykroyd, Gilda Radner, Andrea Martin, Catherine O'Hara, John Candy, Eugene Levy, Joe Flaherty. I mean, it was a killer cast. But there were some great people in Chicago too. Bill Murray, John Belushi, people like that.
Right.
So I think there were more really good people in Toronto, but that's just me. And so anyway, when Lorne plumbed, sort of cherry picked the actors that he wanted for SNL from the Toronto cast, he took Gilda and Danny from the Toronto cast. He took John Belushi from the Chicago cast. He took Bill later, but he had plans for Chevy and a couple other people like Lorraine Newman and Garrett Morris. So Bernie Sahlins, who was the owner of Second City, got mad that he was being cherry picked by Lorne Michaels. And he says, we're going to do our own show. Well, that was sort of, I was in the stage cast in Toronto at that time. I joined the cast with Dan Aykroyd and Gilda Radner and Eugene and Joe and John Candy had gone to Pasadena to open a Second City in Pasadena, which was a total disaster. And they closed really fast, but anyway. So Bernie wanted to do his own show. We were sort of like, there already is a show. You're not going to be able to sell this.
Right.
But he did. He cobbled together a deal with Andrew Alexander, who was his partner in Toronto. And they got a syndicated deal, which was even back then the bottom of the barrel in TV late night. SNL was in the bottom of the barrel of the primetime ratings bucket. And we were at the bottom of the barrel with the syndicated deal. And so we were in about 48 US markets, and we had a national deal with a network in Canada called Global. And Global paid all the below the line costs. And Bernie and Andrew cobbled together some money to pay the above the line, which was the actors. And trust me, they didn't cobble together a lot because we didn't make much. And but the show stayed on the air for 2 years and then got canceled. And then Andrew didn't want to give up on it, so he got another person to contribute to the above the line, which, as all shows do, it had been growing. The costs to do the show, cast and makeup and hair and all those other various things. So he found somebody in Edmonton, Dr. Charles Allard, that would do the show. And he provided a below the line too. He had a television studio in Edmonton, and he was kind of a man of the future. He wanted to create a super station. He had big satellite dishes like Ted Turner did in Atlanta, and he was going to just beam his stuff all over the world. Well, that didn't happen, but it gave Second City a home. And what we didn't know was that the president of NBC at that time, Brandon Tartikoff, had been watching our little show. And he decided, you know what? This show would be a great show for Friday nights after Carson. So we already got SNL on Saturday nights.
Right.
Well, Carson takes up the first hour of Friday nights from 11:30 to 12:30. We'll own Saturday and Friday nights if we put this other show on. So we went on NBC and we had to up our game from a half-hour show, because that's how long the show was in the first 2 seasons in the syndicated deal. And in the third season with the Dr. Charles Allard and CBC broadcaster deal. And we had to do a 90-minute show, but we were on NBC. And then the show in its first season got nominated for 5 Emmys. And then all of a sudden we were successful after we'd been on the air for 4 years.
Right. And I'm sure after, I'm sure you were labeled an overnight success, right? Like every hard worker is an overnight success, even though you're like, we have years of doing this.
There were a few people that were, kind of like, that watched the syndicated channels. And there was a guy that for Newsday magazine in New York named Marvin Kitman, he got on us in the first season and thought the show was brilliant. He just started giving us good reviews. So there were some people talking about it, but at the best, it was a cult hit until it hit NBC, Anyway.
I mean, right.
So that's the story. And I was actually there for like all of that, including the Brandon Tartikoff stuff. And Brandon was he's gone now. He passed away, but he was a very smart executive. And he's the guy who put Seinfeld on the air. And then it didn't get ratings for the first year. And the other network people wanted to kill it. They wanted to take it off. He said, no. This show will find an audience, and this is a good show. And so he was like that. You know, he would find a show that he believed in, and he would just push past the normal metrics that allow shows to stay on, you know, or get canceled.
Right. Now, you won an Emmy with Second City TV, right?
I did. And then
Where? Well, you've won what, 2 Emmys now, right?
Yeah. I got another one for, I think I did for ESPN. But, you know.
Where do you keep those?
Because I had. You see them on the shelf there?
That's
there. No, there
beautiful.
they are. They're on the shelf there.
Oh,
wait,
those are beautiful.
Wait, I was turning it the wrong way. There they are.
Oh yeah, right there. Yeah, those are great. Oh,
so anyway, yeah, I have 3 because I was not officially awarded. Second City won Best Writing 2 years in a row, and I had left the show to do Strange Brew with Rick, the McKenzie brothers movie. But I had written some stuff for. I'm trying to get this. I'm trying to get centered on your camera. I had written some stuff for the second season. Sorry, for the season where the show got nominated a second time, and went back and did some sketches. And they said, "I'll give him one." So I got the kind of the Mercy Award for my work.
Well, if anybody out there wants to give me a Mercy Emmy, you know,
bring it on, right?
Right. Yes. Great. Like I have some local yokel awards, you know, little podcast awards. But if somebody wants to now, and you are also nominated for a Grammy as well. Like, are you trying to get that EGOT?
No, that was the comedy. The album that Rick and I did was not supposed to be a hit. we did that thing after taping the show all day, and we'd be burned out as hell. But we got it. We had a record deal because, you know, the McKenzie brothers broke out in the show and became very popular.
Right.
So all of a sudden we got a record deal with Polygram, and so we had to do an album. And so we would go to a recording studio exhausted and burned out and just have a couple of beers and just talk for 2 or 3 hours till we had to just go and get some sleep. And so we did about, I don't know, it was either 3 days or a week of that after taping the show. And because we had improvised the characters on the show, so we didn't feel bad about improvising them for the album. It was just a question, it became a function of editing. And so we said to our producer, all right, you got it. After 5 days of yapping into a mic, we said, cut something together and we'll take a listen. So he did. And we listened to it. And both of us looked at each other and I said, I don't know. What do you think? I said, I don't know. But Rick had been a DJ. Rick had been a disc jockey.
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
he said, we got to have 2 songs. A song. I said, why? And he said, because we won't get airplay on the radio unless we have songs. So I said, oh. So he said, all right. So then we had the spoken word part of it recorded. And we were in Edmonton. And that's where we did that. And then we came back to Toronto, where we lived, on a break. And Rick talked his friend that he'd gone to school with, Geddy Lee, from the band Rush, into singing the lead vocals on our song. Because neither Rick or I are singers. Right. So we did some spoken word bullshit for the song, and Geddy sang a song, and we had a couple of jingle guys that wrote jingles for commercials in Toronto write the song, and we recorded it. And then we said, okay, that's the first song. And I said to Rick, why do we have a second song? And Rick said, because when the first one plays out, and it will, you need a backup second song. So that's why we recorded the 12 Days of Christmas, which was our second song. Now, it became a perennial favorite. You know, I mean, it gets played every year and we get residuals still 40 years later, you know, so I don't know.
Hey, that's pretty, I mean, that's longevity.
It is, isn't it? I mean,
Uh,
believe me, I'm old and I know it, but I, you know, I've done stuff that I never thought I would do when I was starting out. And I look back over it and I go, holy crap, you know. And when I was a kid and I was watching, you know, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, I was going, man, I'd like to be on that show. And then I was on that show, you know, being interviewed by Johnny and making him laugh. And then when I was, you know, roughly the same age, I was a big fan of Bob Hope. And thought, man, I'd like to work with that guy. And then I ended up doing that. I ended up being on some of his specials, and
right.
you
Now,
know.
did you do your Bob Hope impression in front of Bob Hope?
Oh hell
right?
yeah, yeah. I did it on his shows. I did it on his 90th birthday special. I came out and played Chester Hope, his nephew. I did a cheesy little monologue. Anyway, it was, and then I was a huge fan of John Cleese from the Monty Python. I just thought, man, I'd be great to work with him. You know,
I got his book here as
yeah.
well. There we go.
And then I ended up working with Cleese on the movie Rat Race.
I think Rat Race is underrated.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I loved it, and it had a ton of star. What's his name? Breckenridge.
Yeah, Meyer.
Yeah. And then obviously
John Lovitz is killer in that.
John
He's
Lovitz.
so funny in
Bean.
that car where he burns his lip and he's like driving Hitler's car and he's being chased by bikers. He's so funny in that.
And then, like I said, Bean.
Rowan Atkinson. Mr.
Yeah,
Bean,
Rowan Atkinson. I mean, I don't know. I am very partial to. I love Rat Race, and if it's on, like if I'm skimming through, like, oh, I need something to watch, and it's there. It's an old familiar that I know will make me laugh.
Yeah, it still makes me laugh, and I mean, and normally I don't laugh at all at anything that I'm in. So you know.
Speaking of things that you're in, again, I mentioned at the very beginning. I think my introduction to you, at least, you know, like what I remember, was Grace Under Fire.
Oh yeah.
And that was, I guess, a cult, like a show based in the South, and you're used to, you know, doing the Canadian shows.
That's where you're wrong, my friend, because I was raised in Durham, North Carolina, and I was born in Canada. I was there till I was 6, and then my dad was he taught philosophy, and so he was at Duke, and I grew up. So from the age of 6 to 12, I was in Durham.
Oh, nice.
And so those are very formative years, you know.
Absolutely. I just flew into Durham a couple months ago. So I just flew into Durham a couple months ago. I was doing a comic convention in Raleigh. So I've spent a little bit of time in that area. It's very.
I didn't even know there was an airport in Durham. I thought you had to go to Raleigh for the airport.
Yeah. So I guess it's called the Raleigh Durham Airport.
Oh, is it?
I guess
yeah. Okay. Okay. Right.
But I've gone out to I've been out to Durham Bulls games and stuff like that. So obviously super famous from the movie.
We lived on Markham Avenue, which was right across from the campus.
Oh.
And so my dad's in the philosophy department, and my mother, like, he wasn't making a lot of money, and my mother got a job as a secretary, but turned out to be assistant, with a guy by the name of Dr. Carl Zener and his partner, Dr. Joseph Banks Ryan. And they worked in the psychology department at Duke, but not the regular psychology department, the parapsychology department. And they were doing experiments trying to find out if people had ESP and meeting people that made claims that they had powers, going to seances and busting people for bullshitting or coming up with fake stuff. And my mom was, because she could take shorthand, and they, the tape recorders at that time were 50 pounds. Nobody was lugging those around. And my mom would go with them and take shorthand notes. And she had a really interesting time working in the psychology department at Duke.
I bet.
I should say in the parapsychology department. It wasn't really, it's funny because it was regarded kind of with disdain by the regular psychology department, because they thought these lunatics are giving us a bad name and with their crazy science experiments. But the Zener cards, which test people for ESP, they're cards that have a circle, square, triangle.
That's what I was going to ask about. If they were the card, if you saw the cards.
Those are the cards that were developed by Dr. Carl Zener, and they used them in Ghostbusters.
Right. Yes. That's exactly where that was exactly what I pictured.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you got a pretty good reference level. You know a lot for a young guy. Most young people don't have a very deep well of knowledge.
Oh, I'm a super nerd.
Okay. Well, it's good then. I consider that. I think it's a compliment. I think to have a good reference level is really important.
Yeah. So, that's really cool. And you got to see, and yeah, I was going to ask, did you see the cards? And so,
well, yeah, I did, but they had several sets of them. There wasn't just one set,
Now, did you try it?
Yeah, I had no ESP powers at all. I was, I think, well below average.
All right. Well, what I want to do right now is something that we do on every show. It's called the Milo Beasley Show Frequently Asked Questions. And these are going to be the same 5 questions that I asked to every single one of my guests. Okay. Are you ready? There's no wrong answers. Just first thing that comes to your head.
Sure.
Question number 1. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Haley Mills. I was in love with her at the Parent Trap. I wanted to meet her and marry her, and I never did. Either meet or marry.
Yeah, that's a great one. I loved her and well, I guess it was before Saved by the Bell, so it was Good Morning, Miss Bliss.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Parent Trap. What a great movie. And the fact that it took me so long as a child to figure out that it was the same person. Just meant that it was such a great job all around.
My parents were both British, so it was a combination of her dialect and just her sweet little blonde face. I thought, God bless you, you're a doll. I was in love with her.
Absolutely. I get it 100%. All right. Question number 2. What is your guilty pleasure song? So what song, maybe it's not everyone's favorite, but you are playing it whenever it's on, you're turning it up, you're singing it, you're turning it on in your car. You don't care who's next to you.
Okay. This relates to me growing up in the South. It's a song called Louisiana 1927 by Randy Newman. It is probably the song that has brought tears to my eyes more than any other song that I've ever heard.
I'm going to have to write this down.
It's a very sad song. As you may know, Randy Newman is he writes scores for movies. So nobody writes for strings better than Randy Newman. And the strings in that song are just, in my mind, they capture the essence of the South in music that I've never heard anyone nail it the way he nailed it with that. There's a pathos and a sadness to the American South. I don't know if it's still that way, but when I was there in the mid-50s to the mid-60s, it was a place where a beaten people who had lost the Civil War were talking about, ways that they could get it back. somehow they could get. And these are people that weren't even alive during the Civil War, but they were still fighting it in their heads. And that song captures the sadness of it. It's targeted at New Orleans and the flooding that goes on in Louisiana, and how that, I mean, I don't know how many times they've rebuilt in Louisiana and New Orleans. It's just, they just get flooded every year. And the people that live there have an indomitable spirit. Anyway, that's my favorite song. And I'll play it whenever I can.
Fantastic. I have it written down. I'm going to listen to it like right after this, right after we get done, just so I can understand. All right. So this is if you had to, if your life depended on it, would you rather fight one giant duck or 100 duck-size horses?
Well, I would have to go with the horses, because I happen to know that geese are ridiculously strong, and I was attacked by a goose when I was a little kid, and I got the shit beat out of me by that goose. Their wings are really powerful, and they are fearless. So a big duck would probably have powerful wings like a goose because they can fly, and would be a formidable enemy. Whereas a bunch of tiny duck-sized horses, you could probably kick the crap out of them and they'd just run away.
I've never, so like, I ask this question to all my guests, and I've never, everyone usually talks about the legs, you know, or the mouth. Nobody has ever mentioned the strength of the wings. And I think that's something I've never thought about.
If you've ever been attacked by a goose, you would know. They're formidable opponents, you know.
Right. Yeah. And they have to be strong to fly. Like, never thought about that.
And they're big. Like Canada geese are big. That's what Sully Sullenberg got in his turbofans on that plane that landed on the Hudson. You get a couple of big full-sized geese going into a turbofan and it's over. That thing is toast. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I do. All right. Question number 4.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite movie quote?
Okay. This is a weird one. It's from Tombstone.
Okay.
And it's Michael Biehn's line. And I got to actually talk to him about this a year and a half ago at a Pensacon. I went to Pensacon because my friend Billy Zane said, come to Pensacon. I'll set you up. You can sign some autographs and make 25 grand or something. And he said, it'll be fun. And my friend Michael Biehn's coming. I said, oh, I want to meet him anyway. So sure. Okay, I'll come. So here's Michael Biehn's line. It's from the very end of the movie when he and Val Kilmer are facing off, who's playing Doc Holliday. And he says, I got no quarrel with you. When he shows up, he goes, well, it starts with, well, I didn't think he had the guts to show up, something like that. And he goes, I'm your Huckleberry. Now that's the one that most people would say.
Right. That's the one. Yes.
Quote, but that's not mine.
Oh.
And he says, Bean looks at him because the light changes and he sees that it's Doc Holliday, and he goes, I got no quarrel with you. And Holliday, he calls him Holliday. And he goes, I beg to differ, sir. We had something that, we had some business that was unfinished. And he goes, well, being still trying to get out of me. He says, well, I was just messing around. And Val says, well, I wasn't. And then there's just a moment when Bean gets this crazy look in his eye and he goes, all right, Lunger, let's do it. I love that line. I laughed when I heard it the first time because he's calling a guy with tuberculosis Lunger.
Right.
But Johnny Ringo was so insane that he was just like, all right, let's do it. I love that line so much. And when I talked to Bean about it, because, I was a fan of his from Terminator too. He's Kyle. He comes from the future to save Sarah Connor. Anyway, I said, I said, you know, that was my favorite line in the movie. He said, it was mine too. He said it was his favorite line.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, maybe we can get you back at Pensacon next year. I think I'll be hanging up there February 18th through the 20th up in Pensacola.
Oh, it's
Pensacon.
earlier this year. It was in April or something.
Yeah, it's you know, it moved. You know, there were.
Oh no, it was the end of March. It was just before COVID.
Right.
Florida started getting COVID cases, and I was still there.
Right.
And I flew back like this.
Oh, you're right. So it was of 2020. It would have been the February 28th through March 1st.
Yeah.
Because I had another convention that same weekend, so I wasn't able to go to Pensacon that weekend. So, but hey, maybe you can head up in the future again next year, February 18th through 20th, Pensacola. Okay, cheap plugs. It's all about the cheap plugs, right?
Absolutely.
All right, and our final question here: if blank was an Olympic sport, I would win a gold medal. Fill in the blank.
What do I do better than? This one stumps me. The other ones were easy. This one is like, it has to be something that I think I'm really good at. And I don't. I got to give you an answer. So it'll be, but it won't be a well-defended answer. I can just tell you right away. The first thing that came to my head when I heard that was eating. If eating was an Olympic sport, because I do love eating.
What's your go-to meal?
It would be linguine pasta with pesto sauce and sausage.
Oh,
that, to me, is a trip to heaven. My wife makes this really beautiful toasted Italian bread with sprinkled garlic, basted with garlic, oil, and olive oil and garlic, and then cheese sprinkled on it, and but very lightly, so that it doesn't become like, you know, having a grilled cheese sandwich with your pasta. It's a heavy meal, but it's a great meal. I love it.
I'm super hungry right now. All right. So the second thing, so before we wrap up and I can go eat, is going to be called the Milo Beasley Show Top 5. I'm going to ask you a random question, no particular order. Give me your top 5. We kind of touched upon it earlier, and that is time travel, not possible, but time travel movies. Top 5 time travel movies. Or TV shows, I guess.
Sure. Okay, Terminator 2. I thought that the sequel, like Aliens, he outdid himself. Cameron outdid himself with the sequel.
Absolutely.
And then a little simple, sweet one called About Time with British actor. What is that guy's name?
About Time.
Yeah. Hold on a sec. You can edit this, right? This is me looking it up. What is that guy's name? I can't believe he was in Love Actually. He played the rock and roll guy.
I'm looking. Is it
Bill Nye? So it's called About Time. It's Bill Nye. Rachel McAdams is in it. It's a delightful, sweet little movie, and there's no time machine. And that makes it a delight for me and wonderful to watch. Okay, so that's 3.
Right.
About Time is my 3rd. My 4th would have to be the original Time Machine with Rod Taylor. And my 5th would be Back to the Future. Those are my favorite time travel movies.
Again, thank you so much for coming on. Again, we want to,
Hey,
yes,
folks,
yeah,
available on Amazon for the shockingly low price of $8.99. The Many Lives. Ooh, that's great.
right there. The Many Lives
Jimmy
of
Layton,
Jimmy Layton.
written
Yep.
by Dave Thomas and Max Allan Collins.
Pick it
Thank you.
up. I mean, I can't honestly, like, this sounds silly, and I know everyone always says it, but I'm super excited to read it, and I'm super excited to add it to the shelf. It might be the biggest book on the shelf at 300 some pages.
I know.
I'm super excited.
About that.
I mean,
but I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll have fun.
Yeah, it sounds like nothing that's up there already, which that piques my interest. But I'm super excited. I mean, and it's a new foray, that you're jumping into, and that's great. And I want to be able to read it before the movie comes out, so I can be like, the book was better.
Well, I hope that's not true, actually, because I want the movie to be better.
Well,
then I'll get some money out of it.
This is true. Anybody? Do you have anybody in mind for the part of Jimmy?
You know who would kill it? Sam Rockwell.
Yeah. Speaking of Terminators,
he would really. Have you seen that movie he did with Kendrick, where he's a hitman?
No, I haven't.
Oh, that's delightful. It is a great little movie. Hold on a sec. I got to do a little plugging for Sam Rockwell, because he's one of my favorites.
That's what we're all about.
So, wait, did I diminished the picture? Hold on a sec. It'll take me just a second here to get it up. Okay. Mr. Right.
Mr. Right. Okay, I have not seen it.
Oh, you got to see that. You will love it.
Fantastic. That's on. Hold on. Is it spelled R-I-G-H-T?
Yeah. And it's him and Anna Kendrick.
Oh, love it. Love Anna. Yeah.
Yeah. He's an insane hitman in it. It's very light, it's like, have you seen Ryan Reynolds, The Hitman's Bodyguard, with Sam?
Yes.
Max? I love that. That was just a fun ride,
Yeah.
I love movies where I don't have to think.
Bingo. I love that. And then we're right around where it's Christmas season, and you mentioned Anna Kendrick from Mr. Right. Noel on Disney Plus, one of my all-time favorite Christmas movies, and it's relatively new, so that's another fun movie if you haven't seen it.
I haven't. I'll check it out for sure.
Absolutely. All right, so before we wrap up, where can folks find you on the social media? I don't know where that folks just came from. That was a weird little thing. Where can folks find you on the internet?
I have my own website, davethomas.com, and there's links to my Twitter account, but I never really use it. And but there's occasionally I put the book up as a tweet. And then what did I do? The last one before that was for Norm Macdonald, that I put a sad tweet up. But mostly I've been putting up tweets about people that have died, that I feel bad that they died, But anyway, yeah. So those are the places. I don't have Facebook, and I don't have any Instagram or any of those.
Well, again, davethomas.com for all your needs. And will there be a link to buy Jimmy Layton on there?
There will. It isn't up there yet because I'm really a Luddite, but I'll get to it. I'll do it.
All right. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me this evening. There's so, gosh, I feel like we need a part 2. There's so much we didn't get to. Like,
That's true.
So
Well, I'll come on
for sure,
again.
we'll schedule a part 2 after the book
Sure.
comes out after the new year. Let people read it, and we'll get back together soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys next week.